beans and noodles, welcome back to this channel where I desperately try to patch together the ones and zeros of my life into a quilt that I offer you as warmth and comfort, letting you know that you're not the only one fumbling around on this earth trying to make sense of a story that's writing you. Anyways, in 2018, I dropped out of school to pursue my purpose and become famous on YouTube. And while I did not succeed, I truly believe that failure is just success in progress. Hollis, why did you drop out of school? Well, when I dropped out, I was what the hippies would call very tuned in and turned on, which meant the next logical step was to drop out. I mean, that is how the saying goes.
We tell young people today, drop out of school. Because schools, education today, is the worst narcotic drug of all.
So I felt like this veil had been lifted over my eyes, and I finally saw this socioeconomic system that was corrupt and deceitful, and I felt very angry and thought that protesting and dropping out of school was the right thing to do. I really wanted to be the change, and I really wanted to pursue purpose and passion rather than profit. And so I feel like these motives, paired with my health that felt like it desperately needed to be rejuvenated because I was hiding an eating disorder behind veganism, those two things really pushed me over the edge and made me feel like I needed a drastic change. So I literally just left school in the middle of the semester. Like, what did you even do when you dropped out? Well, when I left, I sincerely thought that I was going to become famous on YouTube and be a digital artist in some way. So I started investing in those skills. I also was heavily influenced by the psychedelic messiah complex that tends to come out in us, where we believe that we are the chosen one. And while we are chosen for this and this life and this experience, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're this grandiose identity. And so I feel like life really brought me to the healing waters of humility on that one. And I began traveling the country in a van that I built out, thankfully, from the money that my grandpa left. I totally recognize the privilege and the unique and amazing opportunity that was. Investing in those skills allowed me to acquire an unorthodox skill set that I was really looking for, and it allowed me to turn to life as my teacher and not just seeking education as an academic pursuit, but education from the university, from life itself. And I traveled. I worked on a farm that turned out to be a hypnotherapy retreat center for people who are social workers and psychologists, which was amazing. I also spent a lot of time in Colorado and hiked mountains and spent time with hippies dancing in the moonlight, which was really fun. And eventually I drove myself in debt and I crashed and burned metaphorically in Madison, Wisconsin. Where my dad helped me sell my van. Thank you, Dad. And I began working again in a restaurant to pay off my debt and afford to live in the city that I worked in. What did you realize from this? Well, after a year of working in a restaurant again, well, I worked in restaurants for 7 years, but after this last year that I worked in Madison, Wisconsin to pay off my debt, I realized that I had a unique privilege of going to college, and to change the world and be the change that I wanted to see, it didn't require me protesting and dropping out and being angry, and it actually was asking me to invest in my education and really inform myself and pull myself up so that I could help others from a different advantageous spot. And so after dropping out of school, I realized that transferring schools is really hard. If you drop out of school and you're like, oh, I'll just find a school somewhere else, it's difficult to transfer. And that's something that I didn't really know. And so once I dropped out, it became very daunting, the thought of returning. And that's something I want people to be aware of. Once you leave, it is a little hard to return. However, taking time away from school or taking time before you go to school to understand a little bit better what it is that drives you is really important. Taking that time away completely served me because I was able to return to my education with a deepened sense of appreciation and a new direction, a new ambitious, passionate self that was excited to learn about what I was learning about and how I could apply it to help the world. I think sometimes we're rushed and we're pushed into school and it's like, figure out what you want to do, pick your path. But I don't think life works that way. I don't think it's so linear. I don't think it's so disciplined anymore. I feel like we're moving into a more interdisciplinary world where we acquire skills and knowledge from all different routes and we create this network of understanding and we make connections between these disciplines to solve the complex problems of the world. Which brings me to another point. I think it's really important when you go to school, if you have that opportunity to truly follow your interests and your passions. I think for so long, so many of us have been encouraged to do things that make us money. And while we do need to make money to survive in this world, when that's our primary leading question, I feel like it can be very constipating and suffocating. And I think when we shift out of how can I profit, how can I monetize, into how can I help, how can I create and reimagine the world that I want to see through my interests and my passions, I feel like that shift is liberating. I feel like that shift is so healing because it gets us out of a fractionalized self. It gets us out of the individual identity that wants to just consume and amass profit to a more global identity, to a more expanded and integrated holistic identity that allows us to create value through our interests and our passions. Which also makes me realize that pursuing my purpose is not a singular event. Like my purpose doesn't exist as this thing that I'm chasing after. And when I do that, I create this gap, I create this weird timeline of like, oh, one day I'll find my purpose and then life will be... But really, like, purpose exists in every single moment. And when you connect and align with your values, you find that purpose in every moment. Purpose is not just like a contained concept. It's a fluid thing. It's a fluid characteristic that we can find in every single moment that we can use to heal. So these are just my reflections from dropping out of school. And I say, follow your passion, find purpose in every moment. And if you have privilege, use it. Use your privilege to help others. Use your privilege to lift yourself up. And don't let me trick you into thinking that I know what I'm doing. I'm still fumbling around. But I think I have a little better idea, and I feel excited about what I have to offer the world. So I hope this video makes you feel a little less alone if you're graduating or thinking about going into school or just like living the university life. May we create a world where all beings are free. Mwah.